What if there existed a book so enigmatic, so utterly impenetrable, that it has defied the world's greatest minds for over 600 years? A manuscript written in a language no one speaks, filled with plants that never grew on Earth, and diagrams that seem to map not just the stars, but the soul itself. In dusty vaults and digital archives, it sits like a silent oracle, the Voynich Manuscript. A codex of whispers. A riddle bound in calfskin. To some, it is a medieval hoax, clever, but meaningless. Yet to others, it is the last surviving text of a forgotten civilization, or perhaps even a message from a higher intelligence cloaked in a cipher beyond our comprehension. But what if we told you that the truth isn't just about cracking a code? What if the real mystery lies not in translation, but in interpretation? The Voynich Manuscript may not be a puzzle to be solved, but a mirror, reflecting the limits of our knowledge and the expanses of our intuition. In this video, we'll descend into the labyrinth of this forbidden book. You'll learn of its eerie contents, illustrations of unknown flora, star maps with inexplicable logic, and rituals that hint at alchemical transformation. But we'll go beyond the pages, exploring the esoteric traditions it may draw from, the possible intentions of its creator, and the strange synchronicities that have surrounded its journey through time. We'll uncover why this manuscript has captivated cryptographers, mystics, and scholars alike, why it stubbornly resists analysis, and perhaps, why it was never meant to be deciphered by the rational mind. This isn't just a historical curiosity. It's a portal, a metaphysical riddle daring you to look deeper, to question what knowledge truly is. So, take a breath, still your thoughts, and prepare to peer into one of the greatest mysteries humanity has ever encountered. The answers may not lie in words, but in the spaces between them. To understand the enigma of the Voynich Manuscript, we must journey back, far beyond its rediscovery in the early 20th century, into the shadows of forgotten epochs and hidden traditions. Though named after Wilfrid Voynich, the antiquarian who acquired it in 1912, the manuscript itself is believed to date back to the early 15th century. Radiocarbon analysis places its vellum pages between 1404 and 1438. But these dates are merely coordinates on a map we cannot read, for the true origins of this text are shrouded in silence. No one knows who wrote it. No one knows why. And no one, despite over a century of modern effort, has been able to read a single sentence. Its language, if it is a language, does not match any known tongue. Dubbed Voynichese, it follows strange rules of syntax and frequency, as if it obeys a linguistic logic we no longer recognize. Some theorists suggest it's a cipher. Others claim it's glossolalia, channeled language from altered states. And a few whisper that it's something far more arcane, an ideographic script meant to transmit ideas not through semantics, but through resonance. The book itself is divided into distinct sections, though none are labeled. There's a botanical segment filled with surreal plants that resemble nothing in our natural world, drawn with obsessive detail as though each held symbolic significance. There are astronomical diagrams aligning celestial bodies in ways no modern star chart can replicate. Women bathe in strange fluids. Tubes connect their bodies in ritualistic configurations. Herbal concoctions. Zodiac wheels. Architectural forms with no known function. All of it hints at a worldview, perhaps even a metaphysical system, lost to time. But to frame the Voynich Manuscript solely as a riddle of history is to miss its deeper resonance. This text is not merely unreadable, it is unknowable. And that unknowability speaks to something ancient within us, the recognition that not all truths are meant to be spoken. In many esoteric traditions, sacred knowledge is encoded not for secrecy, but for sanctity. The Hermetic axiom, as above, so below, was never meant to be decoded by the uninitiated, it was meant to be experienced. In this way, the Voynich Manuscript may be less of a book, and more of an initiation. Across time, civilizations have preserved knowledge in symbolic systems. The Egyptians in their hieroglyphs, the alchemists in their cryptic formulas, the Kabbalists in their letter permutations. These weren't puzzles to be solved, they were mirrors to the soul. The Voynich Manuscript may follow in this tradition, presenting itself not as a linear narrative, but as a multidimensional codex. One that speaks not to the rational intellect, but to the archetypal imagination. There is a reason why this book remains cloaked in mystery. Perhaps it was never meant to be cracked like a code. Perhaps it is an act of spiritual camouflage, a defense against those not yet ready to receive what it contains. Or perhaps it was designed as a meditation on the limits of human understanding, a deliberate exercise in humility for our knowledge-obsessed age. After all, what happens when even our most advanced technologies and brightest minds cannot unlock what looks like the simplest of books? More than a medieval relic, the Voynich Manuscript may be an artifact from a world we have forgotten how to see, a world where plants held cosmic wisdom, where diagrams mapped internal landscapes, and where knowledge was not extracted, but revealed through silence, symbol, and surrender. In this light, it is not a failed book, but a perfect one. A sacred labyrinth designed not to explain, but to awaken. And as we move deeper into its mystery, we must ask ourselves, what if the real key to the Voynich Manuscript is not out there in the world, but hidden within the soul of the one who dares to read it? To approach the Voynich Manuscript as merely a cipher waiting to be cracked is to miss its essence entirely. This is not just a puzzle of language, it is a philosophical and metaphysical koan, like a Zen riddle designed to break the mind open. As we begin to explore its contents more intimately, a pattern emerges, not in the form of grammar or translation, but in the echo of ancient systems of knowledge. The Voynich Manuscript is a silent symphony of esoteric symbolism, each page a chord meant not to be analyzed, but felt. Let us begin with the botanical section, perhaps the most immediately arresting. Page after page depicts strange, otherworldly plants, leaves shaped like lunar crescents, roots that twist into serpent-like patterns, flowers with impossible geometries. To the untrained eye, they appear like the product of hallucination or fantasy. But to the esoteric initiate, they resemble something more profound, archetypal flora. In many ancient traditions, particularly in the East and in indigenous cosmologies, plants were seen not merely as physical organisms, but as carriers of spiritual intelligence. They were bridges between realms, beings of wisdom that communicated through vibration, not language. What if the Voynich flora are not illustrations of real plants, but spiritual signatures, representations of etheric botanicals, the kinds encountered in dreams, trances, or during deep meditative journeys? Their odd structures may reflect energetic anatomy rather than biological form. Roots that spiral like vortexes. Stems that intersect like ley lines. leaves that resemble celestial wings. These images suggest more than botany, they hint at alchemy, not of metals, but of consciousness. Then we arrive at the manuscript's astrological and astronomical pages, circular diagrams that resemble star maps but defy known constellations. Zodiac symbols appear, but in strange configurations, orbiting within mandalas that seem more metaphysical than observational. These are not charts for navigators of seas or skies, but for those who travel the inner firmament. In esoteric thought, the stars are not just balls of burning gas, but mirrors of our internal cosmos. Just as the planets influence tides and seasons, so too do they shape the rhythms of spirit and psyche. Perhaps these diagrams are not calendars or horoscopes, but tools for aligning the soul with the cosmic order. Most haunting, perhaps, are the depictions of women, naked, often bathing or emerging from tubes and pools. At first glance, they appear odd, even whimsical. But look deeper, and you begin to see ritual, transformation, rebirth. These figures, always drawn with care and consistency, may represent the divine feminine, the archetypal vessel of life, mystery, and intuition. In alchemical tradition, the feminine principle is the crucible of change. The vessel, the hidden moon within the self. These women may symbolize stages of spiritual transmutation, bathing in healing waters, purifying the body, ascending through symbolic pathways. And what of the strange tubes, the vessels, the anatomical diagrams? Could they reflect early bio-spiritual maps? In tantric and yogic traditions, the body is not a mechanical shell, but a sacred geometry, a temple of flowing energy. Nadis, meridians, chakras, these unseen lines carry life force, just as rivers carry water. The Voynich tubes might be attempts to represent these subtle energies, visualized not with modern anatomy, but with a mystical, symbolic lens. They seem to record something not physical, but energetic, a mapping of the human form as a landscape of divine currents. What emerges from all this is not clarity, but resonance. The manuscript, in its very unknowability, begins to speak not to the mind, but to the intuition. It is a work that seems designed not to tell, but to awaken. The more we try to pin it down, the more it slips through our fingers. And perhaps that is the point. In an age obsessed with data, precision, and logic, the Voynich manuscript arrives like a ghost, reminding us of the sacred unknown. It dares us to step outside the rational and into the symbolic. To feel instead of decipher. To remember instead of analyze. And so, the further we go, the more we must ask ourselves, what if the manuscript was never meant to be read with the eyes, but with the soul? What if it is not a book at all, but a portal, a mirror placed before our collective amnesia, inviting us to reawaken the ancient language of the spirit? As we journey deeper into the Voynich manuscript, it becomes increasingly clear that we are not navigating a book in the traditional sense, we are moving through a symbolic dreamscape, meticulously inked by an unseen hand. The deeper layers of the manuscript do not seek to inform, they seek to transform. And in doing so, they invite us to reconsider not only the nature of knowledge but the very frameworks through which we perceive reality. One of the most debated elements of the manuscript is its script. The looping, flowing text appears organized, structured, and consistent, yet it belongs to no known alphabet or linguistic family. Despite the efforts of professional cryptographers, linguists, and computer scientists, no one has been able to decode even a single passage. Some suggest it could be a cipher masking a natural language, possibly an extinct dialect or a form of shorthand. Others argue it is a constructed language, like Tolkien's Elvish, but crafted centuries earlier, with a depth and consistency that borders on the impossible. But what if the very act of seeking a one-to-one translation is the mistake? In many mystical traditions, such as Kabbalah, Dzogchen, and Sufism, language is not a tool of logic but of revelation. Words become sigils, carriers of vibration. In this sense, the Voynich script may function more like a mantra or a mudra, less concerned with meaning, and more with effect. Perhaps the script is a visual prayer, a cascade of archetypal symbols designed to unlock dormant aspects of the psyche. Read not with the mind, but with the spirit. Consider also the placement of text around the illustrations. In many instances, the words flow organically, encircling diagrams, weaving around images like strands of DNA. This suggests not a separation between image and text, but a sacred union, language and symbol intertwined like body and soul. It calls to mind the illuminated manuscripts of Gnostic sects, or the mystical diagrams of medieval alchemists, where art was not decoration, but invocation. The Voynich Manuscript may be just such a grimoire, one written in a symbolic system so unique, it resists translation not by accident, but by design. Then there are the medical and biological drawings, oddly anatomical, but without clear reference to known human physiology. Pipes, ducts, and womb-like vessels repeat through the manuscript, often accompanied by the figures of women, often grouped or in sequence. To the materialist eye, they appear nonsensical. But to the initiate, they suggest ritual processes, perhaps echoes of spiritual gestation, purification, or Kundalini awakening. These aren't surgical illustrations. They're sacred maps. Guides to internal alchemy. One particularly intriguing hypothesis posits that the Voynich manuscript is the product of a deeply mystical consciousness, perhaps the work of a lone visionary, someone operating far outside the dominant paradigms of their time. This creator may have been guided by dreams, visions, or trance states, recording impressions from altered states of awareness. It's not unlike the way shamans record their visions in symbolic art or the way prophets speak in metaphor and parable. The manuscript may be less a book and more a transmission, a download of esoteric knowledge meant for a future time, or a different kind of mind. Some have even speculated that the manuscript is not of terrestrial origin, that it may be a message seeded by non-human intelligence, encoded in a symbolic matrix that bypasses linguistic boundaries. While this remains speculative, it is worth noting that many ancient traditions speak of star knowledge, wisdom passed down by celestial beings, encoded in symbols, art, and ritual. Whether literal or metaphorical, the idea that the Voynich manuscript holds a frequency not meant to be understood, but to be received continues to resonate with those drawn to its pages. Of course, mainstream scholarship often dismisses these ideas as romantic or absurd. The manuscript, they argue, could be an elaborate hoax, a meaningless fantasy created to dazzle or deceive. But even this interpretation fails to explain the consistency, the symmetry, the sheer obsession embedded in every stroke. Hoaxes are rarely so beautiful, so methodical, so enduring. The Voynich manuscript challenges the very criteria we use to define meaning. It resists analysis because it does not speak the language of our rational mind, it speaks the language of mystery. It exists in that sacred twilight between the known and the unknowable. And in doing so, it becomes not merely an object of curiosity, but a living symbol of the human soul's quest for forgotten wisdom. Perhaps its message is this: not all secrets are meant to be solved. Some are meant to be experienced. And in the act of surrendering to the unknown, we rediscover the sacred power of wonder itself. It is tempting to believe that a book as cryptic as the Voynich Manuscript offers nothing of practical value, that its meaning lies locked behind an eternal wall of secrecy. But this belief stems from a modern misunderstanding of what practical truly means. In ancient traditions, practicality was not confined to utility or function, it meant transformation. Practical knowledge was that which could shift your perception, realign your soul, and awaken deeper awareness. And in that light, the Voynich Manuscript is a spiritual mirror, offering us subtle but powerful tools for inner alchemy, if we learn how to engage with it not with expectation, but with reverence. The first key is contemplative observation. Instead of analyzing the manuscript with the goal of decoding it, try to experience it as a form of visual meditation. Choose a page, perhaps one with strange botanical forms or mysterious bathing women, and allow your gaze to soften. Let the lines and curves guide your attention as though they were symbols in a dream. What emotions arise? What thoughts echo back? In this practice, you are not trying to figure it out. You are letting the manuscript speak to you in a language beyond words. This is an ancient technique used by mystics, gazing into symbols to awaken the symbolic eye, the inner sight that sees beyond the literal. You may begin to notice that the manuscript changes you as much as you attempt to understand it. It cultivates patience, humility, and an openness to mystery. These are not passive virtues, they are spiritual technologies. In a world obsessed with answers, the ability to dwell within mystery is a radical act. It teaches you to hold the tension of the unknown without collapsing into certainty. That is the true soil where intuitive wisdom grows. Another tool is dream incubation. Ancient civilizations often believed that symbols held in the mind before sleep could open portals to deeper knowledge. Try meditating on a page of the Voynich Manuscript before you go to bed. Print it, place it by your bedside, or simply close your eyes and visualize it. Ask for a dream that will reveal an aspect of the message, not necessarily in words, but in imagery, feeling, or symbolic metaphor. Keep a journal beside you to record what comes. Over time, you may find that the manuscript begins to appear in your dreamscape, guiding you through inner gardens and forgotten doorways within your own psyche. You might also experiment with symbolic journaling, using the Voynich script as a gateway to your own intuitive language. Try copying a few of the Voynich glyphs with your hand, not to imitate, but to feel. Let your pen flow in similar loops and forms. Allow your hand to move spontaneously, guided by emotion rather than logic. You may begin to discover your own symbolic alphabet, one that speaks directly from your unconscious mind. This act of symbolic writing is not nonsense, it is a sacred dialogue between your conscious and subconscious selves. The Voynich Manuscript becomes a muse for unlocking your own inner codex. Finally, consider integrating ritual into your practice. Light a candle before opening the manuscript. Breathe deeply. Say aloud, "I open myself to sacred mystery. May that which is hidden be revealed in the timing of the soul." Treat your time with the manuscript as sacred. Even if you never unlock its meaning, you will begin to notice changes in your inner landscape. A heightened sense of intuition. A deeper trust in nonlinear knowing. A softening of the analytical mind. The shift is not outside of you, it is within you. This, perhaps, is the greatest gift the Voynich Manuscript offers, the return to living mystery. It reminds us that knowledge is not only about clarity, it is also about reverence. That wisdom does not always speak in straight lines, it sometimes whispers in symbols and songs of silence. In a world that demands instant answers, the manuscript invites us to dwell in the fertile darkness of the unknown, to trust that what truly matters is not what the manuscript means, but what it does to us when we choose to listen. In the end, the Voynich Manuscript remains what it has always been, a threshold, not a destination. It is a book that does not give itself easily, a sacred riddle wrapped in vines, stars, and silent glyphs. And perhaps this is its truest message, that not all knowledge exists to be mastered, some knowledge exists to unmaster us. To shake us loose from our need for certainty. To lure us into deeper waters where the soul remembers what the intellect has forgotten. We live in an age of unprecedented access to information. We carry in our pockets the collective knowledge of centuries, yet still hunger for something more. Something ancient, something real, something that cannot be downloaded or distilled. The Voynich Manuscript touches that longing. It is a relic from another way of knowing, one that speaks in curves and symbols, in metaphor and mystery. It reminds us that true wisdom is not always linear or explainable. Sometimes, it is felt in the bones, heard in dreams, recognized by the soul long before the mind can make sense of it. There is power in what resists explanation. The manuscript's silence is not a failure, it is an invitation. An invitation to rekindle our relationship with the ineffable, to step back into a world where the sacred is not dissected but revered. In this sense, the Voynich Manuscript is not broken code, it is sacred code. A transmission meant not to be solved, but lived. So perhaps the real question is not, what does the Voynich Manuscript mean? But rather, what awakens in you when you sit with it?